Pay close attention. What you are seeing today is fulfilling Bible prophecy. Welcome to YPN News, bringing you the news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Katan, more and more people are realizing what Yeshua Hawkins has been teaching about Bible prophecy is 100% accurate. Now, we have two great interviews to talk about this week. One from a retired General Wesley Clark, which was actually recorded March 2nd, 2007, and the second one from Michelle Chusodowski, the author of the book Globalization of Poverty and the New World Order.
Now, both of these men are speaking about world events, and what they have to say lines up exactly with what Yeshua Hawkins has been teaching for over 30 years now.
But before we talk about their interviews, our field correspondent Larry McGee has been on a tasty assignment looking into this new research that shows fried foods are healthy for you.
Provided, of course, you use the right cooking oil. Now, Larry, what do you have for us this week?
Thanks, Katan. Exciting news this week for fried food lovers. According to a 10-page study recently released by the British Medical Journal, fried foods are okay. The study, which was conducted in Spain and followed 40,000 people over the course of 10 years, found absolutely no correlation between foods fried in olive and sunflower oil and coronary heart disease, which is a major cause of death in most industrialized nations. For restaurant owner and chef Jasper Mirabel, however, interviewed for Missouri's KMBC, the study doesn't come as any surprise. They've been sauteing in olive oil for years. The secret, Mr. Mirabel relates, is in the quantity. You don't have to use a cup of olive oil to fry a chicken or beef cutlet, Mr. Mirabel said. 3 or 4 teaspoons is more than enough. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Wow. I sure do love fried foods. I'm looking forward to that. Well, now we're going to go ahead and take a look back 5 years ago as we recall an interview between Democracy Now! And retired U.S. General Wesley Clark on March 2nd, 2007. Now, General Clark explained that about 10 days after the 9/11 attacks, that a general at the Pentagon revealed to him that the United States government had decided to go to war with Iraq. When he questioned the general as to what the deciding factor was for going to war, well, his response was, "I don't know."
Now, he continued, "It's like we, the U.S. government, don't know what else to do. It's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we know how to take down governments." When General Clark returned a few weeks later and was asked if we're still going to war with Iraq, the other general replied, "It's worse than that."
General Clark said that he was handed a sheet of paper that had a list of 7 countries that the United States had plans to take out in 5 years. Those countries are Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off the list, Iran.
Wow. Now, in our second interview, we look at the author and analyst Michelle Chusodowski and his comments on the events centered around the oil-rich Middle East countries. He said, "Well, this rhetoric directed against Iran has been ongoing for several years. In fact, it started in the immediate wake of the invasion of Iraq, and I think what's important to understand is that the United States, NATO, as well as Israel are involved and have been involved in planning a war directed against Iran. And what they want is to essentially have support of public opinion, present Iran as a threat to global security due to its alleged nuclear weapons, which Michelle Chusodowski says it doesn't have, and of course, then present justification and a pretext for humanitarian intervention on behalf of the international community." Now listen to what Chusodowski had to say about all of this leading into a World War III scenario.
What I think people have to understand is, A, Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, and B, there are a number of European countries which are considered to be non-nuclear states which have nuclear weapons, and I'm talking about Belgium, Holland, Germany, Italy, and Turkey. These are 5 non-nuclear states which have nuclear weapons made in America, stationed in their military bases, and these are, in fact, targeted at Iran. It's a clear case of distortion and double standards. It's to build a war pretext incident, and I think what is very serious here is that if any kind of military action directed against Iran will immediately lead to escalation. Namely, at the moment we have 3 distinct war theaters in the Middle East. We have Afghanistan and overflowing into Pakistan on the one hand, we have Iraq and Palestine. Now, the moment there is any kind of military action, punitive action directed against Iran, that whole region will flare up from the eastern Mediterranean right to the Chinese border. And we must also understand that this action against Iran is also indirectly targeting 2 main countries, China and Russia, which have extensive military cooperation agreements with Iran. And consequently, this has to be understood as part of a global war. If there is an attack on Iran, I think we must understand that we are potentially in a World War III scenario. That whole region flares up, and if other countries intervene, such as China or Russia, even in a passive way, we are in a World War III scenario.
Now, Chusudowski also said, I know for a fact that this war has been prepared since late 2004 in terms of stockpiling weapons, establishing a state of readiness. All that's underway. Just about a year ago, the United States sent in a mission to Israel to modernize their air defense system. The air defense system of Israel is now integrated into the United States and NATO. That, in effect, what we are seeing is the coalition of an alliance of the United States, NATO, and Israel. It's a formidable force in terms of capabilities.
The issue is that U.S. military planners are often unaware of the broader consequences of their actions. They defined back in 2002, 2003, the notion that U.S. tactical nuclear weapons, what they call the mini-nukes, are harmless to the surrounding civilian population. In fact, the Senate then approved the use of these tactical nuclear weapons in a conventional war theater, and they said they could in fact be used on a preemptive basis against Iran and even against other countries. So that what the nuclear doctrine is telling us is that we can actually use these nuclear weapons as humanitarian bombs, because civilians won't be affected. The only thing we're going to do is to go after the bunkers it's a bunker buster technology. And so that it's an extremely dangerous crossroads in which we are today.
Now, he continued by saying the United States has launched a military venture at the global level with its NATO allies. Those who decide on these military actions believe their own propaganda. They actually believe that they are going to make the world safer by waging a nuclear attack on Iran, and they may also believe that Iran is a threat.
So, the whole propaganda ploy which is presented in the Western media has gotten completely out of whack. It's a propaganda ploy which justifies actions which could be devastating, he said.
Now, the constant and persistent reference to the war on terrorism as a justification for waging war in the Middle East, when in fact anybody who has some understanding about that region knows that what is at stake is the oil.
60% of the oil and gas lies in a region which extends from the tip of Saudi Arabia up to the Caspian Sea basin. It's a very strategic region. And why are they demonizing Muslims, the question is? It's very simple. They're demonizing Muslims because the oil happens to be in Muslim lands.
Now, Chusandowski went on to say, I undertook the calculation that something along the order of 60 to 70%, depending on the estimates of the Wells oil reserves, lies in Muslim countries. So that is why they demonize Muslims, present them as enemies of the Western world. Ultimately, if those lands had been inhabited by Buddhists, they would have demonized the Buddhists.
So, we're in a situation where we have a war of conquest. It's the conquest of oil and gas reserves, of course. It's very clearly indicated in national security documents that the objective of these wars ultimately, of course, this is not something they're going to say in public, but the objective ultimately is to gain strategic control over oil and gas reserves and also to exclude any kind of competing powers in the region, which includes China and Russia. Well, as you can see from these news articles, Bible prophecy is definitely coming to pass, and it's starting in and around that area of the great river Euphrates.
That's right. Now stay tuned for our next program where Yishra Hawkins continues to explain those Bible prophecies. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for joining us.